Is there such a thing as a weak father syndrome? Well, you bet there is. Let's talk about this in today's video. So having a weak father in a marriage can cause all kinds of problems in covert and overt ways. It's very complicated because it not only affects the marriage itself, but if there's children in the picture, that can be very confusing and actually cause some childhood trauma depending on what's going on. So obviously we want a healthy balance in a relationship, especially when people are bringing kids into the world. It's all about the yin and the yang, right? There has to be a balance to things. If a child's growing up and they have a weak father, very confusing now. So this is the opposite of toxic masculinity being role modeled for them. I've done a video on toxic masculinity and I'll have the link in the description box below. With toxic masculinity, there's an insecurity involved where a man tries to overdo it with how macho and manly he is. Well, equally unhealthy to this is a man who is not in touch with his strength, his inner self, his masculinity. He cowers from taking responsibility and finding his voice and showing up for the world in different ways. And if he's married, he's hiding behind his wife's skirt, so to speak. Now, what's interesting with this too is this is what can actually draw people together to become attracted to each other in the first place. So you have to be aware of this when you're dating and perhaps thinking about marriage. What is it? What's the chemistry that's drawing you together? Without knowing this fully, you could have kids later, and if the father is passive and weak, then it can destroy the marriage and cause enormous problems for the kids. So when we look at what draws the couple together, well, a stronger, dominant woman may be looking for a man she can take the lead with. She can feel more empowered, more in control. And that can even go as far as a man I can easily manipulate, right? So it just depends on how deep this goes. On the flip side, we have a weaker man looking for a stronger woman because it takes me off the hook. Unconsciously, he may be thinking, well, she's primarily going to raise the family. She'll make all the decisions. She'll take care of all the social responsibilities. I'll let her discipline the kids when she needs to because she seems to like to be in charge, right? And so you have a man drawn to the stronger type of woman as a way to hide, as a way to not look inward at his own stuff in his life. Perhaps he had a weak father role model for him. Well, that could be the case. Well, he needs to deal with it and figure it out with a therapist, hopefully, before he goes and creates this generational trauma where now he's repeating the pattern that was done to him by his father. But for whatever reason, he's feeling insecure, he's lost his voice, his sense of power, and he wants to hide behind the wife and abdicates much of his responsibility. Now, if it's just the two of them in a long-term relationship or married, great. Probably no problem here because they're doing their dance together that they wanted in the first place, right? But when kids come into the picture is when we see the struggles. There's so many, I'll list just a few here today in the video. Well, for one thing, they may identify more with the stronger mother who seems to be more take charge and maybe explains things better. And the one who seems to be making all the decisions, that's the mother, so they may gravitate towards her. Now, if there's any friction between the mother and the father, and there likely will be, especially with the weak father syndrome, because the stronger mother later on may be like, get off your butt and help me. Trying to throw more responsibility on him, trying to make him speak up more, but she's forgetting that she chose him for these very reasons in the first place. She set the table for this, but later in life, when the kids are around, she's resenting this. I need help here. Well, the husband doesn't really know how to help. He's used to taking the back seat, right? He's used to kind of being the wallflower in the background. So now when his wife is demanding more action, he doesn't know what to do. He may try to please her and maybe even grovel, which may piss off the wife even more because she can see it's basically an act. He's not really rising to the occasion, but see, it's important to remember here, he doesn't know how to rise to the occasion. He has no training in this. Because I work a lot with emotional trauma, I see this a lot in my private practice. So now we have the kids growing up siding with the mother now. So now we have this split, this division, right? Taking sides. And the parents may try different forms of triangulation to get kids on their side, right? Which is very confusing to the kid. But all this is starting to roll this way because of the weak father syndrome. They hear the mom perhaps bad-mouthing their father, and so they join right in. Now, for different reasons, they don't have respect for their father. And maybe the mom's not even bad-mouthing her husband, but the kids are losing respect because they see this weaker man. They can tell he's not standing up for himself. Maybe he's letting coworkers at his job situation and his business that he owns, or the way the neighbors talk to him, or other extended family. The kids can tell that they roll over him. He's not role modeling what it's like to make strong decisions, tough decisions, resolve conflict, make moral or ethical choices in life where we're putting ourselves on the line, right? We're standing up for something. Typically, a stronger father is going to role model this and have conversations with the kids about this. I love my dad. He's a strong dude. My dad has my back, and I know he's going to advocate for me no matter what. He helps me understand the difference between right or wrong. I've learned to understand there's consequences in life. Kids need to be taught boundaries, and not everything is a gray area. This stuff needs to be talked about, so the man needs to be able to share his opinions, listen to what the kids say, and have a bit of a debate about it perhaps, or certainly a conversation. So this is what needs to come from the father, and the mother too, of course, but today we're zooming in on the father, the weak father syndrome. A child raised with a weak father may grow up wondering, why do I always feel sort of unsafe in my life? Well, it could be because they've been growing up not feeling like they're protected. If they don't feel protected, then they're not going to likely feel confident in their life as they go out in the world now as they become adults. Because healthy masculinity is a caring father role modeling that you can be strong and also be tender and be vulnerable. A strong, healthy man can certainly talk about his feelings as well. If this is role modeled for a child, they're going to grow up feeling safe in the world and very protected because they had a father who didn't run from anything, including his own feelings. Quite often in family therapy, an adult child may say something like, during that conflict, during that tough period in our life, during the time when our house burnt down, or my mother lost her job, or my mother got very sick, I just saw my father stand there and do nothing. Basically waiting for my mother to take the lead and lead him. Can you see how confusing this would be to a child, especially for a son growing up, seeing that this is what it means to be a man? He's likely going to repeat it again as the generational trauma continues. And of course, the daughters are thinking this is what a man is as well. So it'll be very interesting to see what kind of men they start dating and perhaps marry someday themselves. And that's interesting because it could be a man like their father, a weak man that they want to control because they saw the mother controlling her husband, or because they're angry inside about their father and how weak he was. And a lot of this sometimes is unconscious. It's hidden feelings, sometimes anger about the whole situation. So because they rebel because of this, they may go out and marry the most macho man possible. Now that's okay as long as it doesn't cross over into toxic masculinity, but they may be drawn to toxic masculinity as the opposite from their father. They want to get as far away from what their father represented as possible. And because the father's not talking about his feelings likely in any way because he's too busy hiding, then the kids are not being taught lessons such as it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail occasionally. Failure is just a learning lesson. It's okay to admit we did something wrong and take responsibility and say we're sorry. They're not learning these kind of life lessons because the father is so out of touch with his own feelings because he's still hiding, which shows up in terms of weakness. If the child doesn't learn and is not taught by the father that it's okay to make a mistake, then they may think they're the mistake. They internalize it. And of course, I've done many videos about emotional incest, and this is a prime setup, isn't it, for emotional incest to take place. And of course, for those who are unfamiliar, emotional incest is where one of the parents, in this case, the way I'm describing it, it would be the mother taking over one of her children, likely her son, and treat him like her husband, tell him, the son, all about her adult problems, and so on, because she's sick and tired of the weak, passive father. So we see the setup is now ready to go, and this is how this emotional trauma, this emotional abuse can begin. So in family therapy, if they're willing to work with this, and hopefully they will be, both parents need to take responsibility for what brought them together in the first place. What are the perks? Why did the wife like what her husband offered, his passive side, in the first place? If she's honest, she'll say because she felt more powerful. She didn't want some man dominating her. Maybe she was raised by an abusive father herself. So to compensate for her childhood trauma, she's picking a weaker man. But see, if we can't unthread it this way, where everybody takes their own responsibility and looks at the dynamics that brought them together in the first place, then this will be stalled their entire life and they'll end up miserable together or perhaps even divorce. That's why family therapy is so helpful in helping people understand what role they're playing and where the role came from. Otherwise, this just may continue on and on and on. So what are your thoughts about the weak father syndrome? Were you raised in such a manner perhaps? Please feel free to leave some comments below. Also, please subscribe to my mental health YouTube channel if you like these kind of videos. And until next week, this is Brad Shore signing off from Ask a Shrink.